Hi, and welcome to my channel, Melody Joy Quilts. I'm your host, Melody Joy, and today I'm going to be sharing a quilt with you I made back in February. Now, when I made this quilt, it was dark and cold, and the days were short, and I was dreaming of brighter days. And I had seen a pattern for a quatrefoil quilt, and I thought, man, if I just made some modifications to this and played with the color placement, I could make it look like flowers. So I chose yellow, I added snowballs, I played around with the placements on the other blocks. For the backing of this quilt, I had a 2-yard cut of this really vibrant fabric. I got it from Joann's, and I felt like it went with the colors in the front of the quilt. And the binding is actually leftover fabric from a quilt I made for my niece. This is the fabric requirements. I put colors in parentheses because that's the block I'm gonna make today. And here you can see I'm just going through my scrap pile and starting to cut the pieces that I need. And the block I'm going to make today is going to be very scrappy. I'm just using pieces from my remnants. And fun fact, even on that first quilt that I made with all the sunflowers looking blocks, the fabric in the center is from Moda. I believe the salvage said Moda Marbles 1997. So I think the center, the brown fabric that I used in the center on all the flowers on my quilt is almost 30 years old. And that's one of the things that I really love about quilting is that you can combine old, you can combine new, and just mix it all together. And I just love it. For this block today, I picked this really fun purple. It kind of reminds me of peacock feathers. So I'm going to cut 4 4.5-inch squares, and these are going to be the petals of my flowers. So I'm just playing around with colors here. I'm going to use yellow as my center today. So I'm cutting 1 yellow 4.5-inch square, and it will be the center of my flower block today. Next, I need to go ahead and cut 4 2.5-inch squares out of my accent purple. So this is going to go with the purple pattern to make up the petals. So when I need to get 4 2.5-inch squares out of a 10-inch strip, I find it easiest to just cut that 10-inch strip down to 5 inches, just cut it in half, stack the 2 5-inch pieces on top of each other, and then cut that in half. And then you end up with the 4 2.5-inch squares. So I want to show you how this is going to fit into the block. This purple pattern is going to be our 4 large petals. The yellow I'm going to use as the center of my flower. The purple squares are going to be accent around our petals. And then we also have background, which is a blue, and I still need to cut out some green and whatever color we're going to use for our 4 small snowballs. I decided to use the same color purple, so I just need 4 1.5-inch squares. These are to snowball the center of the flower block. The next step is to draw a diagonal line with pencil or friction pen or chalk pencil. So you're going to draw a diagonal line on the back of 8 of your background squares. I'm now going to take 2 of the blocks that I just drew the diagonal line on and pair them each with one of the squares that's going to be a petal. So each petal square gets 2 of the background squares with a diagonal line on the back. It was at this point I realized I didn't have enough of that kind of marbled blue to get enough background squares. So I found this other piece in my remnants, and I'm going to use this for the rest of my background. So I'm just going to continue cutting a few more 2.5-inch squares until I get to 16 total. I also still need 4 green 2.5-inch squares. In my mind, putting these in the very corner of the block represents leaves around the flower, but again, the color placement in this block is what creates the visual of it making it look like a flower. Okay, so now I'm just going to gather everything and lay it out and double check that I have everything. Again, this is the fabric requirements and measurements for one flower block. The first thing I'm going to do is snowball the center of my flower. So I'm going to take that center yellow square. I'm going to take the 4 little purple squares. I'm not even going to bother marking these because it's pretty easy to just stitch from corner to corner, but I'm going to lay a little purple square on the corner, and then I'm going to sew diagonally from corner to corner to snowball this block. Next, I will iron this block, pressing each of the little purple squares towards the corner. Next, I'm going to grab my scissors and lift up the top layer of fabric. I'm going to use my scissors to cut away the 2 layers of fabric on the bottom, approximately 1/4 inch away from the seam line. Okay, that completes the center of our flower block. Next, I will begin working on the 4 petal blocks. Each petal block is going to get 2 snowballed corners. We're going to use our blue background fabric, the little squares that we drew the diagonal line on. We're going to place one in each corner of our 4 petal blocks, and we're going to sew diagonally on that line that we drew from corner to corner. My son was very proud of himself because he learned how to cut a kiwi, so he had to come demonstrate. And I'm trying now not to think about the fact of whether or not did he wash his hands. Let's get back to sewing. I'm now going to start working on these 4 patches. It consists of an accent color that matches your flower. In this case, we're using purple, a green to be the leaves, and 2 backgrounds of blue. So we're gonna do a green to a background and a purple to a background. We will need a total of 4 that are background in purple and 4 that are background in green. Okay, let's take these off and look at them. This is my favorite part of chain piecing, when you pull that long chain off the back of your machine and it just looks like a celebration. I'm now going to begin ironing these. Again, since we snowballed the corners, it's the same procedure as when we did our middle square. You need to iron it towards the corner, folding it back, and then giving it a good press. Next, we're going to open up our little 2 patch units, and we're going to iron all of them to the background. This will help it nest when we turn these into a 4-patch. So you should end up with 4 of each, 4 that have a purple and 4 that have a green. We're going to put these together so that the backgrounds are opposite of each other, and we're going to sew all of these 4 patches together. And like I said, if you ironed them towards the background, it's going to nest up really nicely, and it's going to give you a really crisp center. Next, we need to add our second snowballed corner to our large petal squares. First, make sure that you trim those bottom 2 layers out from under your snowballed corner. This is going to help remove quite a bit of bulk. So again, you just lift the top layer, trim the bottom 2 away, about 1/4 inch away from your seam line. Now the block is ready to add the second snowballed corner. So again, lay it in the corner and then sew along the diagonal line that we drew. Repeat 4 times. Okay, we need to iron these. Pull that corner towards the edge, lining it up as best as you can, and give it a good press. And then we're going to iron our little 4 patches open. Isn't this little 4 patch just the cutest? I know it's such a basic block, but sometimes I just get tickled with how cute things turn out. Let's go ahead and trim those bottom 2 layers away again, and then we can assemble our block. Now we're going to begin laying the block out. I like to work from the center out and just making sure that my green squares on the 4 patches are towards the very outside of the corners, and whatever accent color matches that flower is towards the center of the block. This is the point where I always start getting so excited because I can finally visualize my finished product. Now we just need to sew each of these blocks into rows and then sew those rows together. At this point, you're so close to being done. Now when we iron these, press it towards the petal block. On all of these rows, I want to iron it towards the large petals. If we do this, our blocks will nest up really nicely. I'm thinking this is looking so good. I love a scrappy block. And while I didn't pin earlier, now that I'm putting the rows together, I am going to nest up those seams around the center block on either side and put some clips in it, and also maybe a clip on the end. This is just to help make sure nothing slips and that the row comes out looking accurate. Okay, we're gonna press to set our seam, and then we're gonna iron it open, and we're gonna iron it towards the outside. Time to add the last row in, and I definitely do recommend clipping or pinning, especially where those seams nest up around the center block. Okay, it's almost time for the final reveal. I'm gonna iron this out flat and let's see what we got. And there it is, a finished block. As you can see, the only thing limiting you is your imagination. You can add whatever colors you want. And actually, when I made this quilt, I had just finished this other quilt for my daughter, Natalie, and it features a lot of the K facet prints. This blue one down here is my favorite block I've ever made on any quilt. But anyway, the leftover scraps from Natalie's quilt is what I put into my Brighter Days quilt. Happy quilting!